In today's episode. Sorry, I can't run your errands, I'm grounded. Doing the travel policy Tango. You want hot peppers, you got it. So let's get started. Sorry, I can't run your errands, I'm grounded. Before you start, know that this is way longer than I expected. I tried to summarize as much as possible, but there are a lot of relevant details. Before deciding if you want to read, this is my perspective of an incident when I was a teenager where my parent very much regretted grounding me. So, this was back in the early 2000s, I was 17, and had very interesting parents, at least, my psychologists have said so. I got my license on my 16th birthday, and became responsible for many of my parents' house management responsibilities. I dropped off bill payments before online payments were a thing. You had to drive to their offices if you didn't mail the checks in time, did the grocery shopping, and taxied my sibling to school and doctor appointments in friends' houses. I was completely on board as I loved driving, and I'd always get an extra couple bucks in gas money. But I also spent the previous year homeschooling, so I could commute to my mother's company an hour away and work for 40 hours a week, for free. So any freedom I got was like scraps at a starving dog. At that point, I pretty much was an adult, but was allowed to go to public school my senior year and reconnect with my old friends from grade school. It was kinda like being half teen, half adult with the entitlement of a teenager who thinks they're an adult. My family's dynamic was interesting to say the least. I was the oldest, my younger sister was the obvious favorite. Each developmental milestone was met with resistance, and as I grew into new interests like makeup, music, and social activities, my parents insisted on getting the same things for both of us and giving us the same freedoms at the same time. She was 3 years younger. But the rules were strict for me, but never enforced for her. I wasn't allowed to date till I was 18, she was allowed to date at 14. They also brought her shopping all the time, but I was the responsible one. So they signed me up for free work with their social group to increase their social standing. My sister never had to work, but we're so proud of you, you're the only child we can trust with the credit card. Yeah, because I've been contributing to this household since I was 14, it's called child labor. I counted the days till I'd be free of my family, but while I was stuck, I found ways to have fun and I had a lot of friends. At 17, I was randomly given a curfew. I never actually had a curfew until that month and was used to being out until 2 or 3 a.m., but in their words, you're going to be home by 10 p.m. every night, because you keep coming in late and waking us up when you brush your teeth. Yeah, neglect is kind of funny when you look back on it. I especially love that I was a teen who still brushed her teeth every day, and it inconvenienced my parents enough to notice me. An additional background tidbit is that my younger sister had been caught with pot in our evangelical Christian family's home. She was in the most trouble she'd ever seen, 1 month grounded, but they let her off the hook after 2 weeks. This occurred the month before the following story. So within a month of my new curfew, I was 5 minutes late getting home. I didn't rush home, I figured it wasn't a big deal. After all, I made their house run, and I actually never got in trouble because aside from brushing my teeth too late, I pretty much was an adult with adult responsibilities. I could literally ask my mom to call me in sick for school, because I didn't feel like going, and she would. Boy was I wrong, they went nuclear. I was screamed at for an hour and grounded for 2 weeks from the car. Well, growing up in that house, it kind of rolled off my back, lol. But I was pretty angry that my punishment for being 5 minutes late was equal to my sister's punishment for storing and smoking drugs in our house. I also knew that my parents were about to regret this punishment. I have quite the mean streak when I'm pushed, and I'm ashamed to admit, I love torturing them at every opportunity. I know they were expecting me to beg for the car and apologize, but I did not. I knew exactly what was coming, and how little they thought this one through. There's a phrase, don't kill the golden goose. Well, when your entire household runs on the shoulders of a 17-year-old, you've made some bad life choices. Especially when that 17-year-old is as smart and reliable as the adults are supposed to be. The next day, yes, the very next day, my mother comes into my room and asks me to drop off a bill she forgot to mail. This isn't word for word, but the gist. Mom, I have to meet with a client and don't have time. I need you to run this to local utility company. Yes, she never asks, she demands. Me, looking up from my book, sorry, I'm grounded. Mom, well, we'll make an exception. Me, no, because then I'll never learn to not be 5 minutes late for curfew. Yes, my smartassness was the main reason I wasn't the favorite child, as they explained to me many times. I apparently had an attitude problem from the age of 4. Mom, well, I really need you to take this to local utility. If you don't, we'll have to pay a late fee. Me, well, if I'm grounded from the car, I'm grounded from the car. I won't be doing any errands until it's over. She huffed off, realizing her mistake. I never followed up with how that one turned out for her. Over the next week, I started acting like a normal teenager. I walked to my friends' houses, I was only grounded from the car, would call my parents when I needed a ride home, lol, that was my favorite. I can't be late for curfew, and you don't want me walking home in the dark. I actually walked so much and so far that my thighs were rock hard at the end of that week. During that week, my parents looked a mess. They had to drive my sister everywhere and learned how exhausting it really was. They had to actually plan their errands and watch their own kids. I was on vacation. During that week, the requests went from, we'll make an exception, to we never meant you couldn't run errands, to these errands are the only reason we let you drive that car, to please, just this once, we only grounded you because we love you, to you're so ungrateful, you're supposed to be the responsible one. Basically, the whole gambit of manipulation. At this point, I'm gaslight-proof and I had actively hated my mom for over 3 years. I was enjoying myself so much that I sometimes wonder why I enjoyed being a psychopath to her when I'm actually not one at all. I have diagnostic proof that I'm not a psychopath, lol. By the end of the first week, I was called out to have a talk with them. My mother was the tougher of the two, my dad was pretty cool, but always sided with her. Mom, we've decided you've learned your lesson, we're letting you off your punishment early, but you have to start running your errands again and driving your siblings. Me, no, I'm good with the current system. Mom, I insist, we don't have time to run errands. Me, smiling because finally. Well, maybe you should have thought about that before you took away my car. Mom, well, if you don't run the errands, you can't have the car back. Me, fine with me, I walked out of the room like a proud peacock. After the 2 weeks were up, they assumed I'd be back to normal, nope. I basically told them that I'd rather walk as the number of responsibilities far outweighed the benefits of driving. They were not happy, but what could they really do? They lasted 1 more week, I went carless for a total of 3 weeks. Finally, my mom broke down and did the unthinkable, she begged. Well, the words were begging, the tone was sucking up, but I truly enjoyed it. It took all my energy not to beam with self-pride. Now, my mother was a saleswoman, she had been inadvertently training me for years. In that moment, I opened negotiations. In the end, I got an extra $10 a week in gas money on top of the $3 here or there for unscheduled errands. I still had the curfew, but I got a few minutes grace period from then on. They never even dared to threaten to take my car or license away again. But the cherry on top, my sister's personal taxi service was closed. Apparently, she treated them the same way she treated me during her frequent and unnecessary rides, and from then on, she had to be nice if she wanted a ride. There were a few incidences where she tried to get my parents to force me to take her or tell her where I was going, but they didn't. They knew better than to kill their golden goose of home management, and for the rest of the year, I finally had a great childhood because I was left alone on my own terms. Doing the travel policy Tango. There have been a few travel policy MC stories lately, here's mine. Our travel policy was very long and very prescriptive. What it wasn't was common sense. It expected us to take the most economical airfare to get to our client sites. Economical wasn't some magical algorithm, it just meant the cheapest, based on what the travel system could find as the cheapest non-stop fare with the fewest stops. There was also a policy that all tickets were to be purchased in economy. Time for MC. My preferred airline at the time was selling guaranteed upgrade tickets. The ticket was an economy ticket, but the travel itself was in first class. There was a cost premium to the cheapest fare, but because of restrictions, it was far cheaper than a first-class ticket. At the same time, I found that I could travel via a connecting city for $6 less on my preferred airline than I could on the non-stop flight the major airline with a hub at my home airport was offering. This made it the most economical. Because the system was configured to return the cheapest point-to-point fare, by coming in under that non-stop fare, and buying the economy ticket, I could travel how I liked. It took me extra time in the air, but I liked flying. My goal was points and status. The result. Through a common alliance, my home airline recognized these tickets as first-class tickets, so my status points accrued at 180 each week rather than the 30 points I would have if I traveled the vanilla method without upgrades or connections. I hit top airline status in about 5 weeks and within 6 months, reached lifetime status that includes free Alliance Lounge access for life. Bonus points: the policy didn't restrict when we travel. I'm a night owl, not a morning person. I was able to travel on Sunday night, often leaving home close to my baby's bedtime. By getting to my destination the night before, I scored an extra night towards hotel status, but also didn't have to get out of bed at stupid o'clock on a Monday. I now have lifetime status on my preferred hotel chain, because I clocked up that extra night every week for the 2 years I was there. The icing on the cake, because the system tracked miles traveled, including those connecting cities, I reached 100,000 miles travel for the year. This made me a road warrior and was then entitled to book first-class tickets for all travel for the rest of that year, and to the end of the next. You want hot peppers, you got it. So I didn't do this, but I was there when my coworker did. I'm from New England and my coworker, let's call him Char, was from the South. And with a don't push your luck attitude. We both working at a store called Let's Call It the Hen. Now the person he got this oh so sweet revenge on, let's call him Grant, is an avid bar fly and would come to our store drunk as a skunk. We made sandwiches there and Grant loved the chicken salad we had. As of late Grant had been getting more drunk and acting like an ## making a mess, and we had to move him away from the women that would come and cause he'd be a total creeper to them. As this was getting progressively worse, he started to be mouthy to us, telling us to shut the F up and make his food, etc. Well, Char had had enough one night when Grant mouthily said, "You better put hot peppers in this FN sandwich, or I'll come back and kick your A. I'm not paying for this if you can't do it FN right, you dumb F." Char, you want hot peppers, you got it. Now Char pads down the bottom of this soft sub rolls that we use, and he just loads it to the edge with hot peppers. And proceeds to finish making his sandwich, being careful to finish it where it won't fall apart. This guy buys it and goes home. Now I like the hot relish our store had, cause it had heat, so a little could go a long way, and a lot could upset your stomach big time. Well, it did with my stomach. But this guy's sandwich had more than a cup's worth in it. So I finish my paperwork and go home. And came in the next day and Char was still there, and was out back explaining to the store owner what had happened. Grant was well known by the entire staff and owner. And it erupted into a lot of laughter. Come to find out, around 6 a.m. Grant woke up and ran to the bathroom. And his screaming from, for lack of a better term, the flaming S #TS woke up everybody in the place he was staying. And that his ass had been on fire for the better part of the entire day. I wondering how he ate the sub without all the peppers falling out. Also found out Char, as a kind gesture, made it so he could open it from one end and then unwrap it as he ate it. And Grant didn't come in for a few days. But he wasn't coming completely drunk anymore, and he had been more polite to Char from that point on, and we had no more issues with him. Thanks for watching.